everyone, it's Mrs. E again, and I'm here for my Creative Writing 6-week course. And today we're starting week 3, Enhancing the Narrative. Don't forget to subscribe, like and share so I can keep making videos just like this one. When you're writing something imaginative, you can make your writing more effective by including detailed description of people and places. To write effective descriptions, you need a clear picture in your mind of who or what it is that you are setting out to describe. Doing this allows you to focus on precise details, which make the descriptions come alive in the minds of your readers. A good rule to follow in writing descriptions is to base what you describe on your own experiences. This doesn't mean that writers always describe exactly what they have seen or people they have met, but that they use their real-life experiences as a basis for their descriptions and then develop them from there. So let's start with the basics. Adjectives. Adjectives are used to describe the noun in more detail. They are essential in descriptive writing. For example, I looked up at the blue sky. The noun is the sky and the adjective is blue. This is quite basic. We need to enhance this. In order to fully captivate your reader, you should use more detailed descriptions than the one above. So let's look at another example. I looked up at the wisps of white clouds scattering the vivid blue sky. Can you picture that a little bit better? So when considering adjectives, really think about word choice. There are so many adjectives that you could pick out to use in your story to make them more engaging and effective. Let's look at these words, for example. Nice, great, big, dark, lovely. They're boring adjectives. Yes, they have their place, but if we really want to captivate, we must use a variety. So instead of nice, do we mean great, wonderful, lovely, fantastic, or magnificent? Instead of great, do we mean exciting, thrilling, inspiring, dramatic, dangerous, and wild? Big, or do we mean huge, gigantic, massive, enormous, immense, thundering, or colossal? Do we mean dark, or do we mean grim, cloudy, moody, or dim? What about lovely? Beautiful, dazzling, divine, gorgeous, or splendid? If you're struggling to find alternative words, just look for synonyms in a thesaurus. Or if you're typing up your stories, right-click on your boring word and hover over the Synonyms tab to find a selection of similar words. But don't forget, if there's a word that you're not sure of the meaning, look it up before you use it in your story. Other word classes to note are descriptive verbs, which are words that describe the action. For example, she crept along the corridor. Rather than she walked, crept tells us a lot more about how she's feeling as she's going along the corridor. And adverbs, words that describe the verb. For example, I walked hesitantly down the road. He laughed wickedly at the children. So again, it gives a more precise image or insight into the character. When your reader is reading your story, you want them to have constant images running through their mind as if it were a movie. This will keep them invested. So let's think about how to create that imagery. We could use a simile, which is a figure of speech that expresses a resemblance between different things, using the words like or as. For example, cold as snow. What a simile does is it allows the reader to picture something and apply it to what's being described. Here we can think about snow and how freezing it is and apply that to the person who is cold. We could use a metaphor, which is a figure of speech comparing one thing to another by saying it is the other thing. For example, she was a rose amongst thorns. Again, much more descriptive. Obviously, she's not a rose, but it tells you that she's something beautiful being surrounded by maybe something evil, something that's not so nice. Or you could use the senses. So what can you see? What can you hear, smell, taste and touch? For example, the smoke was thick and black as it rose from the earth, accompanied by the stench of scorched wood. So I can see the smoke, it's thick and black, but I can also smell it. I'm thinking of the scent of scorched wood and how it burns my nose. There are numerous descriptive devices that you can use to enhance your narrative, but we're just going to look at 3 more, starting with onomatopoeia. This is a word that sounds like the sound it is describing. For example, slap, pop, hiss. By using words such as this, your reader not only sees the scene, but they hear it as well. You could also use it as a narrative hook. For example, bang could shock the reader and scare them. Allowing them to feel that emotion will make them more invested and make them want to carry on reading. Another example of a descriptive device is alliteration. This is when 2 or more words close together in the sentence begin with the same letter or sound. For example, decaying daffodils danced in the distance. By the repetition of this initial sound, you're emphasizing this image, this description. Use this when you really want your reader to pay attention to something specific in your story. And finally, personification. This is describing something that is not a person as if it were. For example, decaying daffodils danced. So daffodils can't dance, people can, and as the car crept forward, its engine whimpered in despair. Now, personification is a really quick way of getting your reader to identify with something in the text that's maybe not a person. We know what it feels like to dance, we know why we dance, usually we're happy, so the fact that the daffodils are dancing adds that warm emotion. Whereas we know what it feels like to creep, we know how we're feeling when we're whimpering, and we know the feeling of despair, unfortunately. So we can apply all that emotion to that car and realise that the car is not having the best time. However, be warned, you must be original. Language devices can be very effective aids in your imaginative writing. However, if a device is used too often, it tends to lose its effect. For example, the young child was as good as gold. You've probably heard this term, as good as gold, over and over and over again. This contains a simile, but the comparison is so common that very few people, when reading it, think of the precious nature of gold and how this emphasises the value of the child's behaviour. Overused devices such as this are known as clichés, and relying on them too much is a sign of lazy writing. There's a time and place for a cliché, but it's not throughout your story or your novel. So all of these devices and techniques we've talked about so far in this course, you can use to create tension. But what is this? Narrative tension is often described as the reason you turn the page. It has 3 components, and they are anticipation, uncertainty, and investment. So let's look at these 3 separately. Anticipation. But what do we mean by this? It's a feeling of excitement about something that is going to happen in the near future. Anticipation is present when the reader becomes aware of possibilities. Let's look at an example. Imagine writing a story that will centre around the lead character being caught in quicksand. There are ways you can make the reader aware of the possibilities of this. For example, directly. The car radio broadcasts a local investigation into the dangers of quicksand while the character is on their way to the beach. Indirectly. A lifeguard warns the character to be careful on the sand near the water. Or foreshadowing. Before leaving for the trip, the character sees their neighbour tipping water into their sandpit and burying their Barbies. Uncertainty. You want your reader to feel uncertain, certainly through the majority of your story. But what is it? It's when they have doubt or lack of certainty. Because they're unsure of the outcome, it compels them to keep trying to solve the uncertainty, which as a result makes them read on. They may think they know what is going on, but a good writer will keep the uncertainty going through twists, turns, and surprises. Finally, investment. What do we mean by this? It's positive identification with the lead character. When you're invested in a story, it's usually because you're invested in the character or characters. As previously discussed, by creating believable characters, you enable the reader to identify with them, and often you want the character to have a happy or gruesome ending. You are either rooting for them or hoping for some sort of revenge. For example, I remember reading Harry Potter, and when it got to the book that contained Professor Dolores Umbridge, I was rooting for her to get the revenge that she deserved. And if you've read Harry Potter, all of the books, you'll know exactly what I mean by Umbridge. Oof, I wanted her to come to an awful, sticky end. Now you have enough tools to write your very own short story or even a novel. Next session we'll start to explore poetry. See you then, and thank you for watching.